Okay, we are going to go ahead and get started. For those of you who have not yet heard, my name is Melissa Henricks, and I am very fortunate to be a part of Gallup's education practice. Some of you may or may not be aware of Gallup's education practice. Many of you probably know Gallup best from our polling side, from our presidential polling over the many, many years, and our public opinion polls. Very much that's what I think we're known for in the public eye. However, we are grounded in over 50 years of research looking at what really helps a company thrive and succeed, and what helps organizations succeed, and that really is the talent of the people that we have within those organizations. And so we've been studying talented people for over 50 years and looking at it from a positive psychological standpoint, and continuing to ask and develop curriculum to help individuals grow with their talent to really be the best that they can be. And when we think about what that means in education, we work with colleges, universities, school districts all around the United States, into Canada a great deal, and all around the world, helping them think about how we further engage our students, how we help them see more hopeful futures, and really looking at their overall well-being. And we know a big part of that is identifying their strengths and helping them be aware of how they develop those strengths and implement those strengths into their daily lives, whether it be academically, whether that be socially, whether that be from a leadership perspective. So hopefully all of you are here today to learn a little bit more about just the foundation of where we come from, and really the foundation of where our practice is based, and a little bit more about our strengths tools. We are going to go ahead and spend about a half hour, maybe a tad over a half hour on our webinar, and then I will open things up to Q&A. So please have your questions ready. There is a chat feature on the lower left-hand side of your screen, and there you can type in questions for us, and we are happy to answer those questions anytime. If it is a question that's appropriate for the slide or appropriate for where we're at, I will definitely go ahead and bring that question up to the group and answer that. If it's something that can also wait towards the end, we will do that as well. So please know we will have Q&A at the end. I do have you on mute today. We've got so many of you joining us. We're very fortunate to have all of you here. But because we have so many people on the call, there's often background noise. And to reduce that, we did mute the lines. But please know today that we will unmute the lines at the end. Also know that you can use that chat feature anytime. And also you will receive a copy of the slides after the webinar today. So please feel free to sit back and relax. In terms of our goals today, I kind of already gave you a basic overview of who Gallup is. We want to really build skill and knowledge around our strength science and learn more about what's next. When I think about where Gallup's education practice and Gallup's really practice around human capital is, I always like to start with this, one of my favorite quotes from Peter Drucker, who's considered the father of modern management. He once said that one should waste as little effort as possible on improving areas of low competence. It takes far more energy to improve from incompetence to mediocrity than it takes to improve from first-rate performance to excellence. And what always speaks to me when I look at this quote is thinking about how I think growing up and a big part of our society is always thinking about how we're going to be the most well-rounded person, and how we need to be kind of everything to everyone. And that what Peter really, or Dr. Drucker, is saying is that we really need to focus not so much on those areas of low competence, but really start thinking about how we get to this first-rate performance, and that's not an excellence, and that's not starting in an area of mediocrity. Because when we focus on when we focus on maybe areas that we don't do so well, and that's where we spend all of our time and energy, what are we doing to allow ourselves to get to that point of excellence? And so by all means, when we think about a strengths-based approach and how we define strengths, strengths is really how we really maximize ourselves. It is, some of you might be saying, gosh, does this allow us to have excuses around what we are not? And I would say that that's a misinterpretation of strengths. That just because we have a strengths-based approach or a positive approach to who people are and what they bring to the table and honoring them for their strengths, that it doesn't mean we can ignore weaknesses, but it means we can identify ways to control those weaknesses or help bypass some of those weaknesses and still get some great outcomes, still get the outcomes and goals and reach the goals that we want to achieve. But we might all do that very differently based on our strength. And so today we're really going to be focusing on those areas of strength. So how do we define strength? Well, up here, I think the easiest way that we define strength is by looking at our strengths building equation. So we believe that talent is where it all starts with. Talent is that foundation of who we are, and every single one of us has talent. We believe talent is our natural way of thinking, feeling, and behaving, that it's something that's just innate or a part of who we are. When we multiply that talent times investment, and that investment could be anything. It could be going to classes. It could be reading a book. It could be interacting with other people. It could be picking up a new hobby, picking up a new special interest. It's any time that we take practicing or developing or honing in on that talent. So we're honing in and developing skills and building our knowledge base in a certain area. So if we think about examples out there, we can think of a great golfer who at a very young age has been identified as having natural talent, the natural focus that you need for the game of golf, the natural strategic mindset that you need for a game of golf, and the physical aspects that you need for the game of golf. So maybe at an early age someone's been identified, or at any age, as having that talent. The only way that we can really expand and explore and develop that talent is by investment, and that's spending time practicing, getting the right coaches, working out and training our body, training our mind, and learning the game of golf. And then over time, that's when we see somebody who maybe had some natural talent really blossom and have that near perfect performance, which is what we call a strength. A strength is the ability to provide consistently near perfect performance. And the reason why we say near perfect is that we know that we're always consistently growing in that skills and knowledge, and we can always continue to get better and better at what we do and who we are. So it's that talent multiplied by investment, and that's when we get to a strength. So when we think about strengths building and why we want to focus on strengths, I want to look here at a few assumptions that we believe are the right assumptions around strengths. We believe that some behaviors can be learned, but many are nearly impossible to learn, that there is a real difference between talent, skills, and knowledge. And when I always think about what this means in kind of real life, I like to think about someone who is 30 years old. And let's say we had a 30-year-old nurse that we were working with in the hospital. We were an inpatient in the hospital. And that nurse is 30 years old. Let's say that nurse is naturally someone who does not have a propensity for being empathetic, just doesn't have that natural talent to understand where somebody's coming from and really being able to empathize with someone. So a 30-year-old who does not practice empathy because they just don't have the natural talent for it, the natural propensity for it, if they sleep half of their life, which means 12 hours a night, which I know none of us get, but for ease of math, they've lived over 131,000 hours practicing not being empathetic because it's just not who they are. But that nurse probably got training through the hospital and some professional development. And when we think about professional development, maybe that professional development was around empathy training. So we're giving that nurse skills and knowledge around empathy. So by all means, will she or he get better at being empathetic? Yes, I would say they might be able to react in empathetic ways for certain situations in which they've been trained. However, I would argue that if someone who has lived 131,000 hours of their life being unempathetic, it'd be pretty hard to really change who they are overall and really all of a sudden then be somebody who's naturally empathetic in all situations. Because I would really worry that if I threw a situation at that nurse that he or she had not been trained on in skills training or professional development, because they don't have that natural empathy, they won't have an empathetic response if I'm not giving something that on that menu that they learned within training. Because 40, 80, 120, 200 hours of training isn't going to be able to compete with that 131,000 hours of that person's life that they've lived being unempathetic. But what would happen when we think about applying skills, knowledge, professional development training to people based on who they are and honoring them for their talent and helping them see where they can go and where they can really flourish. So that number one is that some behaviors can be learned, but many are nearly impossible to learn. Secondly, that goes into the best in a role deliver the same outcome, but they use different behaviors. And so what this gets down to is that there are no excuses around talent. That I can't be nice because I'm not empathetic, for example. But what it does help us do is it helps us to realize we all have a goal that we want to reach. And maybe for a college student, it's I want to graduate and get a good job. Or I want to pass calculus. Or for one of you it might be I want to complete my thesis. Or it could be I want to engage in a research project. Or I want to start a development program for students. Whatever that goal might be, we're all going to reach that goal in a different way based on who we naturally are. So to give a very simplified example of that, there's several of us here on my floor that get to work on time every day. But when you peel back the layers and figure out why, that why looks very different, and that's where talent comes into play. So Krista, she gets to work on time every day at the same time. And the reason she gets to work on time every day, if I peel back the layers, is because she's highly disciplined and she's highly focused. When something is on her calendar, she's there. She has the same routine, consistent routine, day in and day out. She parks in the same parking spot every day. She has the same routine when she walks in the office and getting to her desk. Now, I don't have that high sense of discipline. I wish I had high discipline in many areas of my life, but I don't. And so for me to constantly develop a sense of discipline that I don't have, what happens is I constantly disappoint myself because I'm always kind of at that mediocre level of getting to my outcome. But if I think about the same outcome of getting to work on time, I can still get to work on time every day. But I have to encourage myself, my talent, in a different way. And for me, I have a very high sense of woo, which means winning others over. Again, winning others over is what woo means. So it means I not only like to surround myself with a lot of people, but it also means that I don't like to let people down. I would be what you might call a people pleaser. I like to see people happy, satisfied, encouraged. And if I feel like I let somebody down, just breaks my heart. So for me, I get to work on time because I have other people counting on me. And sometimes I've gotten smart enough to know that if there's something that I need to encourage myself to do that I don't really want to do, like get to the gym or get on the treadmill, I know that I have to get other people around me to work out, to go to the gym, or get on the treadmill with me, because I don't want to let that other person down. I have no problem letting myself down, but I don't like to let down others. So, again, Krista and I get to work at the same time every day on time, but we both come for very different reasons. Whereas when I think about Judy, she comes to work on time because she's got such a high sense of responsibility, and when she took on this job, she knew part of her responsibility was getting to work on time and being there for her coworkers and her clients. So for her, it's a high sense of responsibility. So when we look at that number 2, the best in a role deliver the same outcomes, but they all use very different behaviors. And then finally, fixing weaknesses prevents failure, and strengths development leads to success. I actually have a slide to give an example about that. There was a course that we studied at the University of Nebraska many years ago, and it was a speed reading course. And in that speed reading course, every student went through the same course, but there was a pre-test and a post-test given. But every student had the same instructor, the same class time, and sat through the same exact course. At the beginning of that course, we were able to then separate the groups into Group A and Group B. Group A was our average reader here in the red, and they started at the beginning of that course at a 90 word per minute rate. Group B was considered the above average reader because they were reading at a rate of 350 words per minute to start. So already starting off quite well. After both groups took the same exact course with the same variables, at the end of that course, our average readers here in the red, they improved. They got from 90 words per minute to 150. So not bad. Not necessarily bad to improve, right? Of course. But when we look at the return on investment we get when we invest in a speed reading course, the skills and knowledge to someone who already had that talent, that natural propensity to to read quickly and comprehend, the above average reader went from 350 to 2,900 words per minute. So there's a big difference in terms of return on investment. And so that's where we come back to is that do we want to fix weaknesses to prevent failure, or do we want to think about how strengths development can lead people to excellence? And again, we can all get to excellence. We can all get to the outcome and goal we're looking for. But talent, the study of talent, helps us to identify those different behaviors, those different talents it takes to get there. So when we think about talent, you might already be saying, gosh, I already know what I'm good at. Or don't people already have an idea of what they're good at? And most definitely we think that there are ways to really gain insight into who you are and what you have a natural propensity for. One way to do that, we believe, is through this 5 clues to talent. We believe that there's 5 clues to really understanding what your natural talent is. Number 1 would be yearning. What kind of activities are you naturally drawn to? Number 2, rapid learning. What kind of activities do you pick up on quickly? 3, timelessness. What activities does time just fly by that you can't believe where the day went? You're having so much fun. Or you're just in that kind of, you have that feeling of enjoyment throughout the day. Where do you have glimpses of excellence where you ask yourself, how did I do that? And then finally, satisfaction. What activities give you a kick, whether when you're doing them or immediately afterward, and you are excited to do that activity again and again? So you might, when I bring up these 5 clues to talent, you might be thinking of something professionally, like speaking in front of a group of students or speaking in front of your colleagues. Or it could be helping develop a student. Or it could be you might be thinking of something personally that you love to bake, or that you love to go fishing, or that you love to play basketball. And those are activities where time just flies by and you do really well and you can't wait to play again. So what are those 5 clues to talent for you? And what are those 5 clues to talent for your students? We believe this is a great way to figure out someone's talent, but we also know that this takes a lot of time. a lot of resources to continually ask some of these questions of yourself, of your colleagues, of students around you. And so over about 15 years ago, we decided to develop a tool that helped us to measure talent, to help us to identify talent and how we can develop that talent over time. Now, so that's when we created the Clifton Strengths Finder. So the Clifton Strengths Finder, hopefully many of you on our call have taken the Strengths Finder. You may have taken something called Strengths Quest, which is the same thing, but Strengths Quest just applies those talents into areas of success within education. So it provides you student outcomes, student success based on talent, also professional success based on your talent, and how to teach based on your talent. So that's what Strengths Quest does. So it's the same exact assessment of Strengths Finder, but Strengths Quest is applied within education. Hopefully that helps to clear some things up on the difference between Strengths Finder and Strengths Quest. So what is Strengths Finder? Well, Strengths Finder is a web-based assessment based in positive psychology. We have over 50 years of research on success that we use to get to this point. And you might be asking more about what that research is. For over 50 years, we've been studying the best talented people in various industries. So the best salespeople, the best CEOs, the best managers, the best teachers, the best principals, the best housekeepers, the best bellmen. We've been studying the best of people for over 50 years in various industries. And then, like I said, then over time we realized that we wanted to build a tool that not only was helping companies and individuals to identify how do we hire the right people into our company and how do we hire the right teachers into our schools, but how do we develop those individuals once we have them here or when they're already ours. And so that's why Clifton Strengths Finder was created, is to really help honor, develop, and grow the people around us based on who they are. So there was 180 items in that web-based assessment that you took, and each item listed a pair of self-descriptors, and you had 20 seconds to respond. And the reason why we provide 20 seconds is we want your first response to that question. So that's why it is a timed response. Now some of you might be saying, I work with students that maybe have a reading disability or have a need to have that timer turned off. We can turn the timer off, but we don't encourage that to be done for the masses. Of course, we encourage everyone to take it with that timer on. But if you know you have a student or groups of students or faculty or staff that need that timer turned off, we can definitely do that. And I'm going to provide a phone number and an email at the end, and that's where you would call and ask for that to be done. And to date, we have over 6 million participants across the world who have taken Strengths Finder. When we think about that number, for those of you interested, Clifton Strengths Finder, we have over 6 million participants. Strengths Quest, which is used solely in education, has over 1 million participants. So we have studied over 1 million students, staff, and faculty across the United States, Canada, and a few other places across the globe. So what can Clifton Strengths Finder do for you? Number one, it's a way to identify the source of our strengths. So what we've been talking about, peeling back the layers and figuring out the why people behave the way they do. It gives us a common language to describe human strengths. So it gives us a language within our department, within our institution, on our campus, in our leadership group, whatever that might be, to talk about what we do well and to help us understand behavior of others. And finally, it provides us a path to building a strengths-based environment. And so we've got lots of incredible examples of college campuses, of high schools that have done an amazing job implementing this in different ways. Some as small as implementing it into a course on campus. We've got one math instructor who every single semester, this is how she starts her class. She starts every single semester with all of her students taking Strengths Quest. Through that, she's able to gain more understanding into their behavior. And by that, it in turn helps her to be a better teacher to that group of students because she's able to see by semester to semester what type of student she's teaching. So if she has a semester where there's a great deal of competitive students, she knows that that semester it's going to be really important that she ranks and rates the students, gives them that encouragement through competition. Whereas perhaps another semester, she sees that there's a great relational group with a lot of woo, winning others over. And so she might encourage or require more study groups or more group work. So, and she's had great success with it. We also have on the other end of the spectrum college campuses like the University of Minnesota that every incoming freshman is taking Strengths, and it is a part of their journey towards graduation. And so they're, as a freshman, they're applying Strengths in a very different way than when they're a sophomore, a junior, a senior, and beyond. And it's really catching fire. And people are using this strengths-based language across campus to really, again, understand themselves, where they best fit and where they're going, but also understand the people around them, how they best work with them, and how they can best encourage the people around them. So up here is a list of those 34 common language themes that we have been talking about here today. And so hopefully this list looks a little familiar, and you have, if you've taken Strengths Quest, have received your top 5 signature report, and that's that initial report that you receive afterward. For those of you who have not taken StrengthsFinder before our call today, at the end of our call there is a slide, and I encourage you to email us and let us know that you haven't taken StrengthsFinder, and we're happy to provide a code to you to experience this yourself, to see if this is something that you want to utilize with others. So when we look at the themes, how individualized are these reports? So that top 5 signature report that we provide to you that gives you your top 5 themes, how unique is it? Well, when we look at how unique it is, to find somebody with the same top 5 as you in different order, it's a 1 in a 278,000 chance to find somebody else like you with the same top 5. To have the same exact order in your top 5, it's a 1 in 33 million chance. So your themes are truly unique to you, and how those themes look at, how we look at them as individualized is also different comparatively to how we look at them when we start weaving those themes together. For example, going back to these 34 themes, when we look at, for example, a theme like harmony, you might look at 2 different people that have harmony, and we can talk about what that theme of harmony means. And we've got great descriptors, we've got great information and definitions around harmony. But it also requires more development, more conversation about what that harmony means to an individual, how they've utilized it to be successful. That harmony is also dependent upon the other themes that surround it. So you may have a person high in harmony, and the themes that maybe surround them, perhaps, maybe it's somebody who has high empathy and high positivity and high maximizer and learner and woo. That person is going to look very different than somebody who has, let's say, high harmony with high self-assurance and high competition, let's say, high command, and high significance. The reason I know that is because my mom, from a personal standpoint, is the person in yellow. And she would be, if somebody just explained about who she is an incredible nurse, very empathetic, always there for others, just always has a real rosy outlook, and is able to, and when she does stumble upon challenges, she is able to overcome them and think about solutions and also gets other people to start thinking that way and is a great listener. Now my husband also has harmony, and he's the person here in pink. But he would not be described as a really nice person because he's got a great deal of command and competition. He's a hard driver, and he's an incredible salesperson. He can convince a lot of people to see things his way. But his sense of harmony is really about that. It's getting people to kind of come along and see things his way. When challenges come his way and people, for example, are at odds or there's an awkward situation, he's the first person to kind of say something smart alecky or tell a joke. And that's his way of using harmony, which looks very different than, for example, my mom in yellow or this person in yellow. So when we think about these themes, by all means, the first part is really understanding them as individual themes, but then it's also looking at how these themes weave together and work together for an entire person. And that's when we get to the beauty of strengths and what strengths can help us do as we develop those talents into strengths to help us achieve our goals. You might be asking, when you think about our database, looking at what's the most common themes in our database. When we were at just over 6 million respondents, the top themes are achiever, learner, relator, responsibility, and strategic. When we think about those themes, it doesn't surprise me that those themes are at the top, especially achiever and learner. The reason I say that is because many of these 6 million respondents are people who helped a lot of our books to get to the top on the top seller list. So there are people who went to Barnes & Noble, who went to Amazon and said, I want to better myself, I want to better the people around me, and I want to learn more about myself. So typically those are folks who are high in achiever. Folks high in achiever like to get things done. They like to make things happen, check things off the list. Folks high in learner, these are people who are always learning. I imagine we maybe have a lot of high learners on our call today. Typically I find that in education we have a lot of learners, people who are constantly devoted to not only soaking in as much information as they can through various ways, but also helping teach that to other people. So when we think about, and I've got some great questions coming in, and I'll definitely get to those questions here in just a few minutes. When we think about the results, you might be asking, can my score change? And some of you on our call today may have taken Strengths Quest more than once. When you look at the technical answer, no. It's really, for every 6 to 8 times you take Strengths, you're not going to see much of a difference or really any difference. Where we often see differences is we see that your top 5 might shift around a little bit, or you might see that one theme pops out of your top 5 and another theme pops in. We believe that you're not just made up of 5 themes, 5 talents, 5 strengths. We believe you're made up of 34. But we provide that top 5 report to you because those are the most signature themes or signature talents of you, and that's what we want you to study. But by all means, you've got a 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and beyond. So what we don't see is we don't see someone's, what we typically don't see is somebody's, number 2 theme jumping down to 34 and somebody's 34th theme jumping up to, number 5. You just don't see those huge shifts. Typically what stays at the top stays at the top, what stays at the bottom stays at the bottom, in the middle stays in the middle and maybe jumbles around a little bit. So when we think about strengths and what it can do for us, I always like to ask people when they first look at that report, which theme really sticks for you? Start to study that theme. Start to study that talent. And that's the best way to start learning and start engaging in this idea of strengths-based learning. When we think about what our strengths do for us, I always like to ask people, think about a time when you were at your best, and what did that strength enable you to do to be so great? And if I look back to my undergraduate experience 15 years ago, I can remember clear as day walking into calculus class. It was a big lecture hall. I myself had to take the course. It was a required course. I didn't want to take it. I knew I was not naturally gifted in the area of math, and definitely not for calculus. But when I look back and think about why I did so well, so a time I was at my best, and this is a very old example, I didn't have my strengths at that time. But if I look back, I did utilize my natural talent, because when I sat in that class, I sat and I looked around the class a lot, and I always looked at who was answering questions, and not only answering them, but answering them correctly, who was taking notes and focused, who was there every day of class, who was going up and willingly writing on the chalkboard. And that was my individualization and my maximizer at work. My individualization and maximizer strengths help me identify talent and what people do well. I'm naturally attracted to the talent in people. I'm naturally attracted to someone who's at the top of their game. And so I watched those students that did really well. And my woo allowed me to approach those people and say, hey, would you like to study? Would you like to study with me? Start a study group. And when I was at my best, because I was worried about passing that class. I got through with a B+, which for me was my goal. It actually exceeded my goal. But I had to utilize my strengths to do that well. Now, there's many examples over the course of those 15 years that I can call on and recall. And I'd like you to think about the same. When have you been at your best, and what has that strength enabled you to do? And so sometimes I'll hear people helping a student, or when they coordinated a leadership event, winning a race, advising a student, developing a new strategy, networking at an event. So think about a time recently when you've been at your best. And what I want you to do is I want you to start peeling back the layers and asking yourself why. And then as you ask yourself why, then start connecting and seeing, can I connect the dots between the why and my talent? When we think about people who have really branded themselves based around their strengths, here's some different pictures of who I think of when I think of various people branding themselves based on their strengths. I think of Steve Jobs. I think of Michael Jordan. I think of Oprah. I think of Warren Buffett. So think of those people in your life, or think of those people in the public eye that have branded themselves based on their strengths. And that can help you learn more about who they are, how that strength can be maximized and utilized and really put to work, and hopefully help you think about how you can then help a student or help a colleague with that same talent that's been identified in them, and developing that and making that